The stars are right, and that means it's time for another episode of The Whisper in Darkness. I'm your host, the Man from Ling. Thank you very much for joining me today. On this episode, we are continuing with our reviews of the player cards in the Path to Carcosa Investigator expansion. This is part 4 of our look at the Seeker cards in the box. In this episode, we are going to discuss In the Know, Scientific Theory, Forewarned, and Shortcut Level 2. There are spoilers throughout if you care about that sort of thing. If you enjoy what you hear, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Before we get started, a quick reminder of how we rate cards here on The Whisper in Darkness. The best of the best get an Elder Sign, while the worst of the worst get an Auto Fail, and the cards in between get a +1, 0, or Elder Thing respectively. Cards that you build around or cards that are good in one particular deck get a Bless token, while cards that we believe are destined to end up on the list of taboos or are simply bad for the big game get a Curse token. Before we get started, I'd like to thank the patrons of this channel for their tremendous support. You all rock. If you'd like to be amazing like these people and support the channel's goals and see your name on this list, head over to patreon.com, sign up for a tier of your choice, and claim your rewards. That would be awesome. Special thanks to Cole Monroe Chitty, Nicole Fiscus, and Nate Lost in Time and Space for their contributions to the channel. I couldn't do it without you. Without further ado, let's get started. Welcome back, everyone, to the channel. We are making our way through the Seeker cards in the Path to Carcosa Investigator expansion. It's been a few weeks since we've recorded. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing good. How about yourself, Matt?
Pretty good, pretty good. Yeah, getting to play some Arkham, getting to play a little bit of the sequel to that game right there. And, but yeah, I'm back. Nice to be talking about some cards again. This is great.
The first card we are going to discuss is In the Know. It is a level 1 asset, costs 3 resources, 1 intellect, skill icon, talent trait, uses 3 secrets. As an action, spend 1 secret, investigate. Investigate any revealed location in play as if you were at that location. Thoughts about In the Know?
I've always had a soft spot for this card. I like it quite a bit.
I agree. Yeah,
It's just such a cool ability. Like, this to me feels very Seeker.
yeah, this is like the Seeker as I think you and I both wish it was.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where like it manipulates Shroud and like manipulates movement, but isn't like hardcore on efficiency, and like this kind of encapsulates that. But I think as a result, like it's kind of expensive and kind of slow, and I think there's been like just better options since. So if you own things like Pocket Telescope, like from Edge of the Earth, for example, like you don't even need this anymore. I like the idea. I wish that this sort of effect was more prominent in the game, because I like the Seeker as like they're more efficient on getting investigates rather than like. But the thing is, the game's kind of dominated by archaic glyphs where you just get lots of clues in one action. I want to like it, but it kind of misses.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because it's a really cool ability that you would think would be really good in multiplayer, but it ends up just not pulling its weight. I think if this thing maybe grabbed you an extra clue and cost an extra experience or something, maybe even 3, something along those lines where it kind of had a bit more of a juiced up ability that might be worth playing in your deck, but yeah, it's just a little too expensive. Though it is kind of cool, you can build your whole deck around kind of doing stuff like this with like Barricade and whatnot.
Oh, that's right, the classic. Yeah, I want to like this too. I think if we went back to it and we designed it more like a Seeker version of Sixth Sense level 4 from Circle and Done.
Mm-hmm.
That's Circle and Done, right? Yeah, where it's like you could investigate remotely and you get to pick what shroud you used and stuff like that. I think that would be the way to like revamp it. And then it could be kind of cool because then you get a bit of efficiency, but you also get like some shroud manipulation, which I think is very the Seeker I wish it was.
Yeah. It feels very much like it was designed with Rex in mind, where you use Rex to grab a clue on your location and a remote location.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense actually, because you could stand on a high shroud location and use Rex to investigate a low shroud location, but get a bonus clue off your high shroud location. Yeah, it's one of those things though that like in practice, like it doesn't really work very well because you have to like set it up. You know, you got to like go out there and then you got to leave a location behind. You got to go back to it, you know, the high shroud one, and you know, and just you spend all these actions like doing
that. Or in multiplayer you send someone else out to go do it.
Yeah, exactly. When you have 4 players, like more than one of them is going to be able to get clues. Yeah, so like when you're talking about the faction that has like other ways of just beating the shroud, like this is the faction with working a hunch. Like you don't need tricks like this.
Yeah, the classic sort of deck that came out of the box here is playing Min with Barricade, and then basically sending out all the other investigators to reveal all the locations, and then Min can sit in her little cubby hole and use In the Know to grab clues and then dish out skill bonuses once she gets her signature. Is it a signature asset on the table?
Oh yeah,
so
the
she
Cerebro.
can contribute to pretty much any test on the table. I haven't played that deck myself. I have seen it played. It didn't do particularly well in the game I saw, I think largely because she drew the King in Yellow right away, and it basically hamstrung her right off the bat, and the deck just never really got off the ground. But I know that certainly there were a lot of decks making the rounds that had that combination, and so it must be at least somewhat successful. I have played this card in solo. I played it in before the Black Throne primarily because you need to sort of keep moving in that scenario, so you don't really have the luxury of stopping at locations for long because you've got the mindless dancers chasing you. And so having this option in your back pocket to reveal a location and then move on if necessary, and then grab a clue at that location with In the Know can be quite helpful. The biggest problem I think with this card is the cost. 3 resources is a pretty significant chunk of change, and you've got to take the action to play it, and you're not really getting anything for that action until you actually start investigating with the card. And it was one of those cards I'd draw and I'd be like, yeah, I really like this effect, but it just feels too expensive and too slow sometimes to hit the table. But when it's on the table, it can be quite useful, especially if you do need to run and you are being pursued by hunters, or you need to get away from enemies, but you do want the clues that you have left behind.
I could see this being really good. I don't know if there's any scenarios that even are like this. So the pattern of Arkham Horror is that once you once you get the clues off of a location, you're done. You're done for the game. Like, are there any scenarios that like rapidly drop clues around the board?
There are, and I can't remember the names of them. Yes.
Yeah, so if the pattern's more like that. Oh, right. Yeah, like Clutches of Chaos. Yeah, so if you had more scenarios where it was like a typical occurrence for clues to like appear on revealed locations, and your objective is not to just, because right now, like the way Arkham Horror works is you visit a location, you get its clues. You visit the next location, you get its clues, and so forth. But if that wasn't the pattern, if the clues were just appearing around the map, Eldritch Horror style, then this would get pretty good. Yeah, because you don't have to go back to wherever the new clue is. You could just find it. Yeah.
How would we rate this one?
Okay, just with the first 3 sets, I don't think this card is that bad. I think a 0 feels kind of appropriate. In Rex, you might get a little more mileage out of it if you're willing to kind of set that kind of stuff up, or Min and you want to do that barricade stuff. But I think apart from that, it's probably going to be not for you. Yeah, I'll land on a 0 because I have a soft spot for it, but it's probably an Elder thing, realistically.
Yeah, it's an Elder thing. Because it's just slow, and it's only 3 charges. Oh, man, honestly, like, with the way things are, the way, like, the game became, like, very quickly, heck, even in this box with, like, Guiding Stones, this could be, like, infinite charges. Like, I don't even see why this needs charges. And then if you have, like, some of the later stuff that's come since then, where you can remote investigate at 0 XP with, like, the telescope, like, this is terrible. So, yeah, I'm going to give it an Elder thing, because at least it, like, does what it does in the tin, without it being, like, that bad. It's just I just want to like cross a few numbers out. You know what I mean? I just want to like take this card and I want to like, pull it apart and like put it back together and keep the art, and
I think if it cost 2 and it replaced Flashlight, you might be a little more.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, there you go. I don't think it needs secrets though. because you're not getting any additional clues. You're not getting any bonuses.
I suppose.
Yeah. But that's like that's what I'm saying with the knowledge of what's to come, rather than like what's in the game right now. So I'm just gonna give it another thing and be done.
I'm gonna side with Nate on this one. Having played the card, I mean, it was useful. It's not a card I would reach for in every deck. It's certainly not a card unless you're trying to build that min deck where you hunker down. But as a solo player, that's not something I can do. So I have never played that deck because obviously when you're playing solo, you're moving around all the time. So, but it does have its uses. I just wish it was like a resource cheaper, so it wouldn't feel so awful to pay the 3 resources for it. And so, yeah, I think I'd be willing to give it a 0, but I can definitely see it ending up in Elder Thing territory as well, given the Seeker card pool for sure. I mean, are you going to spend 1 XP on this or XP on some of their other powerhouse cards? And I think this one
that's right.
sort of just falls by the wayside in favor of bigger things with bigger bang.
Yeah, you got me thinking now. Like, as written, this is the exact same cost and XP cost as Pathfinder. Just like let that sink in for a moment. That was the bar,
The next card is Scientific Theory. It is a 1-cost asset that costs 1 experience point, has intellect and combat skill icons, talent, composure, fast, limit 1 composure in play. Non-direct horror must be assigned to Scientific Theory before it can be assigned to your investigator card. As a free triggered ability, you can spend 1 resource to get either +1 intellect or +1 combat for this skill test. It has no health and 1 sanity. I don't think I have ever played this card. I don't think I know of an investigator who wants to play this card. Maybe Joe?
Roland.
But again, as with many of the composures in the Path to Carcosa, it is extremely vulnerable to being taken out the moment you take 1 horror. What do you guys think about this one?
I think this one gets a bad rap. And I think the reason why is that Seekers don't need this. Because they don't need combat and intellect. I want to like this card because, like, if you look at it on its face, right, it's fast. That's the key. Like, it's fast as 1 resource. It gives you a sanity soak, which for, like, as things go, that's not bad. Like, compare it to Cherished Keepsake, which we're going to be talking about later. That one is, that one's 0 and no XP, and 2 sanity soak, but it's not fast. So I'm like, all right, it's just not bad already, just for the soak. But if you're an investigator who actually needs both intellect and combat, and you have other sources of sanity soak, so you don't have to drop it right on the Scientific Theory, then like this thing's not bad at all. I think it suffers from being one of those cards that it's just not good enough to be worth XP at all. And I think what ends up, because I think it often happens in this game, is you, especially as a guardian, you go straight from 0 to your max stuff. Like you go straight from 0 to your big gun, and you just don't have time for stuff like this, because it's like it's 1 XP and it takes up a slot, and it's like, oh, I had to pay XP for this, but you don't have time to pay XP for this because you're going for your big gun and you're stick to the plan and you're ever vigilant. Do you see what I mean, Nate? It's like you just gloss over this. You don't have like XP space for stuff like this.
Yeah, I think part of that is more an issue with the experience system as a whole, and less this card, because this card's pretty good. Like you said,
like just looking at it, it's like this isn't bad at all, actually. Yeah, because
it gives you good stat boosts. Yeah, and with Seekers specifically, like you have the revolving door of art student and lab assistant, which give you, a ton of sanity soak right there. So, I mean, it's very easy to keep this thing on the board for a pretty long time. And at 1 resource and fast, like, even if you lose it right away, it's not really the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, that's
And in
true.
Guardian's case, it sometimes can protect your other assets from a crypt chill.
Oh yeah, that's right. Because it's
Which
fast. And
is
that's the
kind
key.
of worth it, honestly.
Yeah, because of the fast part. Because like that's the best thing you can lose or crypt chill is like a magnifying glass
Mhm.
because it didn't cost you any actions to put it out there.
Like,
Okay.
that's not bad when you think about it. Like, I
Yeah.
think you're kind of right in saying that this card kind of gets a bad rap. It's just
hmm
Seekers just have this pile of amazing cards that this one just kind of falls
Yeah.
off the side.
Yeah, that's true. And also, this is the same. This is coming off of the back of like higher ed, from last cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Which we had a long discussion about higher education recently, didn't we, Nate?
Mm-hmm.
You know, yeah. So it's like in a world with higher ed, I don't see how anyone would even remember this card exists.
In the defense, I think, of people initially revealing this card is that the Seekers that had access to this card were Daisy, Rex, and Min. And it's like,
Right.
none of them really want the combat boost.
Nope.
So,
Yeah, it's true.
you had maybe Roland specifically. Like, Roland was the one investigator that maybe found this card appealing.
Yeah.
And since then, there's been a lot more investigators that find this sort of effect appealing. So,
hmm
I think your mileage may vary once you expand your
Yeah.
card pool, unlike in the
So
know.
yeah. So yeah, that's true. Exactly. Yeah. So like and also if you happen to have Edge of the Earth, the upgraded version is pretty good. But then again, that's level 3, so it's like kind of narrow on who gets to take that. So
Mhm.
I guess like rule of thumb, like if all 3 effects are beneficial to you, this isn't bad.
Yeah, I think this one, struggles because I think the composures overall that were released in Path to Carcosa sort of got overlooked because the cards that were released in Dunwich were just so strong. Like you said, you had Higher Ed, you had Streetwise, and these just didn't really stand a chance. And I think this one suffers, like you said, Nate, because, you got Min, Rex, and Daisy. None of them care about the combat boost. So why would you spend the 1 XP on this compared to Higher Ed, even if you need to pay extra for Higher Ed if you're playing with the list of taboos? Up until recently, anyway, don't have to do that anymore. And so this one, I think when Joe came out, I was like, okay, well now scientific theory is looking a little more interesting. Right. But I think even in the Joe decks I built, this just never made the cut. Possibly because you're looking at the bigger Seeker cards, the more powerful Seeker cards that can warp the game. And so getting a +1 intellect or +1 combat when you can basically warp the game in your favor it's like apples and oranges, really. So
yeah, and Joe is very fragile in his sanity, so this thing often dies well before you want it to.
How would we rate scientific theory?
This one's really hard to rate because it's good. Like, it's a good card. It's just suffers from not being playable. I don't really know how to describe that.
I get it. Actually, it's like the puzzle pieces have to fit just right for this thing to like be like something you want. Yeah.
And it's just they're just incongruent, I guess. I don't know. It's hard to rate because I want to give it a 0, but I've only played this card like twice, I think, in my entire career of this game.
Tell you what, I've played it like once in my entire lifetime. Take that.
I'm gonna land on an Elder thing. I want to like this card. It's just not very useful within the context of what we're reviewing here. So
yeah, this is a tough one because, like as you said, it's like the puzzle pieces have to fit. And all right, tell you what, here's how I'm going to explain it. I'm going to give it a 0 with like an asterisk, right? And the asterisk is your fingers would burst into flames at like if you ever touch Higher Ed ever again. And if that's the case, then it gets a 0. That's how I'm going to asterisk it, where it's like if Higher Ed is blasphemy, then this is pretty good. 0.
I think I'm going to go Elder thing on this thing. I don't think I've ever put it in a deck. It's one of those cards that when I am upgrading, I often look at it, and then because I don't really play combat-oriented Seekers all that often, the combat boost is irrelevant. And then so you've got your intellect boost, but then you have higher red sitting there, basically the elephant in the room that's sitting on this card, and it's awfully hard to justify spending the 1 XP or 2 XP if you want 2 copies to play this one. So I do appreciate that it is cheap, it is fast, and 1 sanity soak is certainly worthwhile. And then if you can maybe keep it on the table for a couple tests, you probably get enough value out of it. It's just, it doesn't stack up well compared to the rest of the Seeker cards that are available, and especially if you just have Core, Dunwich, and Path, you don't really have investigators that are interested in this. So,
well, Roland.
Yeah, I don't see many Roland decks playing this card.
Yeah, if Roland, all his XP tends to get eaten up by, at this stage in the game, gets eaten up by like the big gun and the stick to the plan. But yeah, so I get it. Yeah.
The next card on the list is Forewarned. This is a free event that costs 1 XP. It has a willpower skill icon and the insight trait. Fast, play when you would draw a non-weakness treachery card. Place one of your clues on your location, then cancel that card's revelation effect. I believe this was just the second cancel a treachery card that was released in the game after Ward of Protection. Ward of Protection is a auto-include in pretty much every Mystic deck that can take it. The cost on this one is a little more severe. You've got to spend an XP to get it, and you have to drop a clue. But when you need to cancel something, this definitely will do the trick.
Yeah, I have liked this card when I've used it. It is a bit steep in its cost, but like you said, Man from Ling, when you need to cancel something, it's generally worth picking the clue back up. I think I've put this in Findex before, and dealing with like Frozen in Fear specifically, like stuff like that becomes pretty useful, because Finn's pretty good at getting clues. He can finagle his way around that, but willpower test, not so much.
Yeah, the thing about this one is I'm looking at it like, so once again, from the perspective of a straight Seeker. All right, so it only does treacheries, not enemies, and it only does cards that you draw. So I think it suffers from just higher edit instead and just pass the test. I think is kind of like the problem it suffers from. I think if like every scenario had like Crypt Chills and Crypt Chills and Grasping Hands, I think I'd be feeling a lot differently about this. But like this is the era of the game where like willpower was like the soup du jour, if I remember correctly, for dealing with treacheries. So that's how this thing kind of. So it's like you could spend an XP and spend a clue to deal with something, or you can just pass the test. I think it's kind of the problem this one suffers from. Yeah.
This is a Roland card, really, in this
hell yeah.
game.
Yeah. Yeah, but once again, Roland can't afford XP,
But it's not a bad card, per se. It's definitely a card you play in lower player counts, like solo and 2-player.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
When you simply just don't have another way of dealing with stuff like that, then this card becomes pretty useful, specifically in Roland, because he can generally just kill an enemy, get the clue back up, and it's not a big deal.
Yeah. I also want to like the idea of like Daisy has 2 Forewarns and 2 Wards Protection. Like I like that because then it's more reliable that you've got it ready to go. Yeah, so I can definitely see that happening. Yeah. I think this suffers from, again, like the fact that it has XP means that people don't buy it. Because you go straight from 0 to the stuff you need. Yeah.
It definitely feels like one of those cards that's a luxury upgrade for a lot of decks.
Yeah, XP utility cards have always had issues in this game.
I like this card, especially in later scenarios when there are a lot of potentially nasty treacheries in the deck. Between this and Dr. William T. Mallison, you can get a fair amount of control over the encounter deck, using Forewarned to cancel the treacheries that are going to wreck you, and then using Malison to deal with, to shuffle away enemies and stuff like that and get redraws. It is pretty painful on the clues, but as long as if you're playing a Seeker who doesn't have a lot of trouble picking clues up.
Oh, like Rex.
You can get quite a bit of value between the two of those. And then I think there's another card, I can't recall the name of it, later, that you can sort of add into this combo and you can get even more control over the encounter deck, but that's sort of later on. But I mean, the makings of that is here, so you can sort of use Malison in combination with this one to protect yourself from really nasty treacheries that don't necessarily rely on willpower. Now, at this stage of the game, like you said, most of them deal with willpower, and because you've got higher ed, you can just throw resources at the problem and just pass the test. But I think as the game has gone on and we've seen more treacheries that rely on agility, and then come Forgotten Age, you have a few that require you to pass combat skill tests. I think this card's stock goes up.
Yeah, and there are also a few pretty nasty ones in Carcosa now that I think about it, but they're kind of rare. I'm thinking, is it Black Star's Rise? The one that like adds 2 doom to your location. Yeah.
I was thinking even just a locked door.
You're right.
Pretty annoying for some Seekers.
Cancel locked door. Yeah, that's pretty sweet.
It's like, if I can't investigate, then this clue is pointless anyway. So
yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think this card suffers from the fact that like utility cards are like the last thing you think of when you're spending XP. But that's more like the XP system doing its thing.
Ratings?
I have quite liked this card when I've used it. Am I willing to go +1? I think I am. I like this card quite a bit.
Oh, baby.
Especially in 2-player, this card has saved my bacon more often than not.
Okay. I think I'm going to go 0 because it is like a legit cost. It doesn't deal with enemies. And then there's also the odds of like you have to draw the card, and it has to be a test that you don't want to just pass anyway. So I think it suffers from like you had to spend XP on it, and it may not actually. You're just going to wait to cancel something that may not come. So I think because of that, I'm going to give it a 0. It's not like Ward of Protection where you just fire it.
Yeah, if Ward of Protection is an Elder Sign, this one is somewhere between a +1 and a 0. I think I'm going to go 0 in the end because it's not the type of card you're going to be reaching for all the time. This isn't really going to be your first choice. Like, if you just have experience points, I don't think you're reaching for Forewarned automatically, which you can definitely not say about a lot of the other Seeker XP cards in the game that will take priority. But I think if you have the slot and the XP for this, especially as you've upgraded your Seeker deck, you have all the crazy stuff that you want to generate action compression and break the game. I guess do you really need something like this if you've already got your foot on the scenario's throat?
Right.
You could make that argument, but I mean, I have played this in decks, and it has, like Nate said, it has saved my bacon quite a few times, because there are some encounter cards, some treacheries that you can't just willpower through, and having, dropping a clue in order to just deal with that and then move on can be useful. So I think 0 is a good spot for this one. It's certainly not the first choice you're going to make when you're upgrading your deck, but if you do feel like, if you've played the scenario a couple times and there's something specifically that you're going to have trouble with, this isn't a bad option especially in lower player counts. I think in higher player counts, you've got Guardians who are stealing stuff from, stealing treacheries and enemies off people. This becomes less And you've
That
got the
being
Mystic who has
said,
Ward of Protection. Is it level 2 that can cancel stuff for other players? So you don't necessarily need this at higher player counts. But I think if you're playing in solo and 2-player, it's not bad.
that being said, if you're in 4-player and you pack this and you draw an Ancient Evils and you cancel it, like you're gonna be everyone's gonna love you so much that they need to buy you a beer. That's like 3 beers right there just for playing this card. So that's like almost worth it alone because your table will love you.
Yeah, like this is one of those cards that it's definitely a lot better in practice once you learn the ins and outs of a scenario or a campaign in general. Like you were said, Man from Lane, like once you have the kind of targets in mind for this card, it feels really good.
Yeah, in fact, when I was playing this in Before the Black Throne, the issue was trying to figure out which of the terrible treacheries I was saving this for, because that particular scenario has a lot of really bad stuff in it. And so I was playing this with Malison and the other card that I cannot remember. And it was often like, okay, do I Malison this because I'm going to potentially draw something worse? You know, there's a lot of cards in that scenario that add Doom. Do I want to cancel that with Forewarned or save it for something potentially more devastating? And so, yeah, I think it does depend on a scenario. And once you've sort of played the game a little bit and you know, okay, Ancient Evils is bad. It's going to wreck me in this scenario. But I have Forewarned. I'd rather, cancel that Doom and have to pick up the clue again later rather than deal with it. So yeah, I think it does have its uses, and it can save your life in a pinch. The final card that we're going to look at in this batch of reviews is Shortcut Level 2. It is a 1-cost event with Willpower, Intellect, and Agility skill icons, Insight, and Tactic trait. It is fast, play only during your turn, attached to your location. Attached location gains a free-triggered ability, Exhaust, Shortcut, move to a connecting location. Now, Shortcut Level 0 is among the best cards in the game. This one actually does something similar but different to that card, in which you're basically attaching this to a location. So if you happen to have a location on the table that is sort of a grand central station for the scenario, you can drop this on there, and then if you have to go back and forth through it, you can use this repeatedly. Or if you're playing in multiplayer and you need a bunch of people to move through it, then you can use this. I don't think I have ever used this card myself. I think I have seen it played once in multiplayer. What do you guys think about this one?
No, this card is ridiculous.
It's true. It really is.
Okay, no, you're looking at it the wrong way, Man from Lane. You see, what it does is it says, pay 1 resource, give everyone a move action.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. The location does not matter at all.
Yeah.
If you happen to land it on something like Rivertown or something, then holy man, then you're swimming in value. But even just play it, give all the players on the board a move action is so good. It is so good.
It's like imagine that you like take your scratch card and it's either you win $1 million or $10 million. Like with Shortcut, you're winning at least $1 million. Like it's so strong.
Even if it's just 2 players, it's still worth it.
You've spent 1 resource and you've gotten 2 actions worth of value. That's kind of amazing, and oh my gosh. And then we haven't even gotten into like the fact that it's a fast that you don't have to do on your own turn. Which, as it turns out,
you have to do it during your turn.
Well, you have to play it during your turn, but you don't have to use it during your turn.
Ooh.
And that leads to some wild stuff, like pulling enemies around, and or like running away after hunters hunt, and good stuff like that. But that's like advanced shortcut strategies. Just like value wise, like even in 2-player, it's still amazing because players have to move. Right, and you can play Shortcuts level 0, which is one of the best cards in the game, and you get 1 move action. Well, what if I told you that for the low price of 1 resource, you could get at least 2, but if not but maybe 3, 4, 5, 7, or 10, like free actions for the team. It's like the most amazing card in the game. I love this card. Every deck that like can take this card probably should, and you'll have better results. It's so good.
Because
It's
even
like
think about the situations where, like, you're at a location, you need to move into a location and move back out, right?
Yeah.
So you stick shortcut level 2 on the location, you take the move, you go in, you grab the clues, you come back out, then you move out.
Oh yeah, that's right. Because you could like come back to the location and then you get double use out of it. Even sometimes. Often what happens is like you have like a hallway type situation. I'm thinking like Essex County Express is like the most pure example of this. So what often happens with shortcut is one player puts it down, uses the shortcut, leaves, and then the next player comes through on the next turn. Uses the shortcut, leaves, and then maybe the third or fourth. But even if only 2 players end up using it because the whole party has gone through, then you're great. And not only that, but it sits there on the table for if it so comes up that somebody needs a 4th action their turn, boom, there it is. Ready to give it to them. It's not like it's not like there's like a time duration on it. It's not like Barricade where it goes away as soon as you've like everybody's used it. No, it just stays there for the rest of the game. Like this card's so good, dude. Oh my gosh.
And specifically on Carcosa scenarios are designed for this card in mind. Like, holy shit, this card is so
like
good in
Pallid
Carcosa.
Mask.
Pallid
Mask.
Mask.
Yeah.
Even Black Star's Rise. There's like that
Yeah.
one hub location that goes out to 3 other locations. Like, so good.
Yeah, but just for one resource, being able to shuttle the team through like through a hallway is like super good. It's just basically at its worst, you're winning $1 million from the lottery.
I will say in my defense that this is clearly multiplayer.
Oh god, yeah.
And I don't play multiplayer that often. That's why my experience with this card has been very, very limited. I mean, it's obvious that when, if you put this in the right spot, you're going to generate a ton of action advantage from it. It's just, as a solo player, shortcut level 0 is good enough.
Yeah, that being said, like even at solo, like if you have the XP lying around, like the worst that happens is you get a level 0 shortcut's worth of value and you spend a resource for it. That's the worst that happens. But as soon as you get the second move action out of it, then shortcut level 2 becomes great. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, yeah, you take a risk in solo that you might only get 1 move action's worth of value, but you could get 2 or more.
Yeah, the issue becomes that you generally just don't have the experience to spend. Is more the issue in solo.
Yeah, that's true.
That's what I was going to say. It's when you say if you have experience points lying around in solo, I don't think I have ever been in that position where I've had XP lying around that hasn't been earmarked for just to sort of upgrade the basic assets in your deck. This is one of those, it's like, man, I'd love to have this, but I'm just not going to be able to afford it. So how would you guys rate this one?
I gotta give it an Elder Sign. It's so good. It is so good.
Plus, it feels good to like use it on teammates, and then and also like if you want to get hilarious, if you get 2 of them down on 2 locations next to each other, I call it the roller skates. Like you get some hilarious stuff that happens when like somebody can teleport across the board. So yeah, totally an Elder Sign. It's almost curse worthy if you think about it, but I think the fact that like you actually help your team with it, and it creates extra options for like team strategizing, like who's going to use the shortcut this turn, I think actually adds to the fun of the game. If that makes sense. Yeah,
because the fact that it exhausts does hamper its ability a bit. You know, it's not like you're going zoom 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 like everyone.
Oh, it better exhaust. Oh my gosh.
Like it feels appropriately powerful, I think.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Well, the solo player in me doesn't know how to rate this thing, so I will defer to the multiplayers in the group and give this.
I was hoping we'd get the world's first like Elder Sign auto fail.
No, I don't think it's an auto fail, and even in solo, I mean, there are situations where putting this down, you're going to generate a ton of action advantage from it anyway, especially in Carcosa, where a lot of the scenarios are built in such a way, like Phantom of Truth, Pallid Mask, Black
Echoes of
Star's
the Past.
Rise. I think you could even make a case for Dim Carcosa if you get this on the right location. You could generate a ton of action advantage. I think for me, it's just, I don't... Experience points are so tight in solo that you're often, you're upgrading your spells, you're upgrading your guns, or you're, picking up those key components first. And because you shortcut level 0 is so good as it is, it's usually enough. And so this one sort of slips down a little bit. But yeah, it's definitely Elder Sign worthy. And so I would be remiss if I gave it anything less than that, just because of my personal experience not having played it very much. But perhaps when I build solo decks in the future, I will take a second look at shortcut level 2.
Growing, evolving, learning.
That's going to do it for our reviews of this batch of secret cards from the Path to Carcosa Investigator expansion. Let us know in the comments down below what you think. Any final thoughts on this batch of cards?
This is like the batch of secret cards I feel were probably the most appropriately designed that we've reviewed so far. We've looked at things like higher ed and all this other silly nonsense that seekers have, but this feels like they got a lane and they stuck to it, and it feels good.
Yeah, that's true. They feel like appropriate. Yeah, they feel fair. Yeah. Oh, you could argue. You could have a discussion about shortcut. Yeah, about
I feel
what
like
that does.
I don't know. Yeah, like shortcut it exhausts, so like you're getting a once per turn out of it. It's still very good.
Oh,
maybe
gosh,
should
yes.
cost 3 XP, but yeah, like you said.
Yeah, this is the world where Pathfinder is 1 XP, though. I mean, keep that that in mind. Yeah. So yeah, I think you're right though. Like this is the batch of like appropriately designed, appropriately targeted secret cards.
From the solo player's perspective, I mean, you do have Pathfinder, right? So shortcut level 2 is...
Yeah, but Pathfinder, as we discussed in our video, oh man, so expensive. I mean, 3 resources, who could afford that? Oh, so overcosted.
That's going to do it for this episode. If you enjoyed what you hear, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. If you need to contact me, I can be reached at manfromlang@gmail.com. I'm also on Twitter at manfromlang. Until the stars are right, keep your shotgun close and your elder sign closer. Take care out there, and happy investigating.